So, gosh, look how
All right.
beautiful it is there. Perfect.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah.
How are you holding your camera? Do you have something you're leaning it on?
I'm just setting it on a fence post. I took a
That's
couple of
awesome.
darts and drove them in and set it on it. So
That's
that'll
perfect. What
work.
a beautiful setup. Awesome.
Yeah.
So let me just pause for a minute, and if you would introduce yourself and tell us where you are.
Okay. I am Chris Williams, winemaker at Brooks Winery in Amity, Oregon. So currently we are on the hill in our estate vineyard, standing in a 1973 planted block of Pinot Noir on its own roots. So we're sitting
Awesome.
at about 700-foot elevation right now, and enjoying a beautiful day. It's a little cloudy, but we'll take it.
I know the story of Brooks, but I would like you to tell the story of Brooks if you don't mind. And then
Yeah.
also just to even go broader, explain to people why Oregon Pinot is different from other Pinots,
Okay.
Pinot Noir.
Well, the story of Brooks. So it kind of ties into how I ended up in the industry also. So I met Jimmy Brooks. He started the winery in 1998 when he was the assistant winemaker at Willamette.
Oh,
He was allowed to make 300 cases of his own wine, so he chose half Pinot, half Riesling. Kind of Pinot to pay the bills, Riesling because that was his passion. Continued that for a couple of years. I met him in '99 and kind of started helping out with some bottling. Ended up coming out and working with them at Willamette for a vintage. And then in 2000, looks like it's a pause.
there you go. You're back.
Okay. To start Mesa Winery.
Mhm.
Started that in '01 and brought the Brooks label over with us, and kind of allowed to grow at that point a little bit more. So started adding a few more labels, but really continuing to focus on a lot of Riesling. That was what Jimmy really, really enjoyed. We ended up finding this estate vineyard in '02. We started leasing about 4 acres from what is now our estate in '02, and started farming that biodynamically. So that was pretty exciting. And then 2 weeks before harvest in '04, Jimmy passed away at 38 years old. Aortic dissection, very sudden, very unexpected. And when Janie, who is Jimmy's sister, came up to kind of take care of the funeral and the affairs and everything, basically a bunch of us approached her with the idea that we would all pitch in and make the wines if she would kind of look at the winery itself and what she wanted to do with it. Pascal, who is Jimmy's 8-year-old son, actually inherited the winery at that point. So it was one of those things where she just had to decide what to do with it. So about 12 of us pitched in that year, made the wines, brought everything back, did the blending, and just as I got to know Janie, we decided, why not? To her it was something Jimmy felt was a legacy he could leave his son at some point. So she wanted to continue that and actually have something to give him. So we went to custom crush for a couple of years until we could make enough of our own wine. About '07, we were doing about 7,000 cases. So we found a little winery on the hill here, got our own equipment, and just put our head down and started making more wine. Got up to about 13,000 cases for 3 years. And then in 2014, Janie kind of said, let's take the next step and build a winery here on the hill next to the estate vineyard. So we put in a 14,000 square foot facility, nice big tasting room, good gathering spot. I mean, about 4,000 square feet of just couches, chairs, outside deck, just a place to really enjoy. So it's been a really exciting experience.
The winery is beautiful. I was able to go to Janie. I didn't realize I'm wearing my Pinot Camp jacket
Yeah.
This is totally not even on purpose. These are the things that I wear all the time. And I kind of grabbed stuff when I came to Connecticut for just to get out of New York. But the wood siding on the tasting room has staves of all the wineries that helped pitch in for that first crush, and it's a bittersweet story, but it's one of the stories that just really sticks out. And my experience is through Janie. I met Janie first, and so I associate her with the winery, and she's got such a great personality. Helped and then was so kind to me when I came out to Pinot Camp that she's my connection. And then I met you at Pinot Camp, and I think you were pouring the Rieslings at the public theater for the T. Edwards tasting, I believe is when we met in the city.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
So can you talk about Oregon Pinot and the Willamette Valley? Just a little overview for people that might not know.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon Pinot in the Willamette Valley, it's definitely different than most California style Pinots. We do have a nice cool climate area here. The last few years we have started to warm up a little bit, so sugar levels are creeping up some. But we have really nice winds in the valley, so we have a really nice cooling effect that happens fairly early in the afternoon. So for the most part, we can really preserve acidity in a lot of the areas in the valley. We have a lot of different soil types, a lot of volcanics, which Pinot obviously does really well on. And I think I wouldn't say that stylistically there's an Oregon style per se. I think there's a lot of different people doing a lot of different things. I think more important than anything, it's quality, just making sure that what you're doing is a good representation of Pinot and it's your own representation.
And then tell me how about the same kind of thing about Riesling. What's unique about Riesling out there? How's it doing? And what's the future of Riesling?
Yeah, I would say the future of Riesling is really bright. I mean, it's definitely a wine that has stayed on a consistent, even keel in its popularity. It hasn't really jumped hugely. It hasn't dropped hugely. It's about introducing, I don't know, introducing the right people to it in the right setting and the right type of Riesling. I mean, there can be so many different types of Riesling that, again, I wouldn't say there's necessarily an Oregon style, except for I would say high acid we don't generally definitely carry. But it's and again goes back to that quality factor, just making sure that you're representational of the varietal that you're showing and the place that it comes from. So we did about 25 different Rieslings last year. A lot of different single vineyard. We worked with about 15 different Riesling sites, and it's actually really exciting to see how different they all are. We always talk about it, but I can actually put 15 wines next to each other and show you how big a difference that climate and soil makes.
Yeah, well, I tasted at least 3 with you. Is that correct? How many different bottlings do you do?
25
Oh, you
for
do?
yeah, Riesling.
Wow, that's real nerd stuff, but that's super
Yeah.
cool.
Well,
Our in New York, there's a lot of Riesling from the Finger Lakes, and finally, in the city, people are starting to be very open to it and realizing the versatility of it and accepting that. Do you see the market changing at all and being more open to it, or how has that been?
I think it's starting to open up to it. Yeah. I mean, again, it hasn't turned into Chardonnay where it's gotten on where everybody wants to make a Chardonnay, and that's
Yeah.
fine. I mean, it keeps the people that are really passionate about making it, and if it stays at a little bit lower level than some of the other varietals, I'm fine with that. Again, making sure that it's all quality and that everybody that's making it, wants to make it, not just
Right. Well, I've heard, I mean, I know you guys as quality winemakers, but I got to say, since I've been posting about this chat, everybody's been popping in saying, oh, Brooks, I love Brooks. Everything they do is good. And it's one of those benchmarks that you just know if it's got the Brooks label on there, it's good stuff. Who is your market? Because I have a friend who works out there at like the Whole Foods, and she was saying that a lot of people from Oregon in general drink more beer. But who is your market? Is it local people, or is it all over the country, or international?
all over the country, and we are in a couple. We're in Japan, and we're in Mexico, and we're in the UK, we're in Canada, and I think about 30 or so, 35 states.
Wow.
So it's a good selection, I would say, and then we have good wine club, good direct to consumer. I mean, we try to make sure that all your eggs aren't in one basket. That everybody is represented, and that everybody that got us to this point, which is just distribution, is long-term relationships. So
Yeah. I hate to ask you this again, but can you tell us again where we are? Your background is so gorgeous. Tell us about the winery, because some different people have logged on.
So we're at Brooks Winery. We're in the Estate Vineyard in Amity, Oregon. So we're looking due east. If there weren't any clouds here right now, you'd see Mount Hood right in front of us. We have a view of Jefferson, St. Helens, Rainier, and Adams across the valley. And this is a 1973 planted block of Pinot Noir. And then directly below us, about halfway down, our 1975 planted block of Riesling.
Somebody just asked in the chat if do you focus on different categories for the 25 bottlings of Riesling? Like, is there dry, off dry, or is it more about the terroir of the different vineyards?
We do. We try to make a lot of the single vineyard stuff ends up being definitely more on the dry side. I do have a couple of vineyards that I've just consistently every year liked in the 23 gram range and the 40 gram range. So we definitely have a variety. We do the estate only in about a 10 gram and then in about a 50 gram. So you can kind of see differences that the sugar gives you in that same block. But then a lot of those estate ones, it's predominantly, it's going to be the clonal material, the soil type, and then where in the valley it's grown.
And what do you like to eat, and what do you tell people to eat as a pairing, or and is Pacific Northwest cuisine still a thing? Even I used to see that in Miami years and years ago.
I mean, it is. I enjoy everything though. One of my favorite pairings that most people never think about is steak and Riesling. So steak and Riesling, if you do a nice medium rare salt only steak with a Riesling, I prefer a little age, 8 to 10 years at least,
Yeah.
and something in the 18 to 20 gram range of residual sugar. A little bit of oxidation, a little bit of caramel goes with that salt and that gaminess, and I enjoy steak and Riesling.
What do you mean by salt only? No, you don't put pepper on it, or?
Well, I mean, I like the enhancement of just salt on it personally. The gaminess. I do use a lot of pepper, but no, I don't generally pepper my steak.
Really? Okay, that's interesting. That sounds amazing, actually. I am a white wine drinker in general, and so I'm a big one for, as long as the white will hold up, it's gonna go great. And then what about the Pinot?
The Pinot, I'll be honest, I drink about 95% white, so I don't think about Pinot.
I hear you on that.
But
But
our Pinots are nice because, I mean, a lot of different styles. There are the bigger, a little bit bigger, a little bit more higher alcohol, a little more tannin to them. I mean, they're going to be the more bright, acidic, and so you have a nice range of different styles of Pinots, so you're going to be able to find a Pinot to go with pretty much anything.
and you make a range of bottlings for Pinot. Can you walk us through those?
Yeah, we do, I think, about 12 different ones. I do one called Runaway Red that's predominantly red fruit driven, nice spicy component, brighter acidity. So kind of 10 months in barrel, start looking for those lots and barrels that exude those qualities. Then we'll do a Willamette Valley bottling. So we work with about 12 different Pinot Noir vineyards around the valley. That's a little bit of fruit from everybody. So the idea is kind of as many different clones, as many different soil types, areas, and everything. Kind of call it the snapshot of the valley, or the vintage, because that particular vintage is around the whole valley, a little bit broader. And so that bottling to me kind of has that character of the vintage on a whole.
Okay, that's cool.
We do a lot of different single vineyard ones, different areas of the valley. Like last year we had the north end of the valley. The wines are a little bit bigger, a little bit richer because it was warm going into the end of the season. But then we had a nice cooling phase, so everything slowed down everywhere else. And so down here in the Yola Hills, much lighter, much more acidic, much brighter, just different, looks like two different vintages almost. So it's fun to have those different single vineyards to show what it was like in that area. And then we do a Janus that's kind of what the cellar likes. So I would say it's a cellar palette. So we take predominantly estate, add a couple of barrels from 3 or 4 other vineyards, kind of for some funkiness, something interesting. And that's always a wine that we can kind of make to our own palate. Where everything else is really tried to be single vineyard is try to produce from the entire block or the entire vineyard rather than say my favorite 6 barrels out of a certain block. I like to take barrels out of every block. The farmer grew equally all the fruit, spent just as much time. So in order to show that vineyard site, I think it's advantageous for me to have a little bit of from all the different blocks.
Somebody just mentioned, I don't know this cuvee, Runaway, and how did you decide to make that?
So Runaway Red, Jimmy started his first year making wine. He was doing 6 barrels. That was 150 cases. Basically, he had 2 barrels on the front of the forklift one night. He was coming from the upper processing area to the lower barrel room. One of the barrels rolled off the front of the forklift, went down the hill. He heard a big crash, a big splash. Figured he'd lost one of his 6 barrels, was pretty bummed. But they got flashlights, hiked down to the bottom, and found that when it rolled down the hill, it actually hit a fence pole, which was the crack, and then hit a little creek down there, which was a splash, but it was still fully intact. So they muscled it out of the creek, got a tractor down there the next day, got it into the bucket, brought it back up. And Ann Williams, who was kind of Jimmy's godmother, she was a really super nice lady at Willakinsey there, came down with a little sign later that day that said Runaway Red. And so that was,
That's awesome.
that's how we started. And then Trotsky on the front of the label. So Trotsky exiled to Mexico City, therefore was a Runaway Red.
Awesome. Oh, right. Okay. So when you say Runaway Red now, I'm like, okay, of course. And Janie just said that there is a story about that. Must be the same story on the web. So when I was out, Pascal was still in school. Is he done with school and working at the winery, or what's he?
No, he's actually living in Paris. So
he's good for him.
He graduated from UC Santa Cruz, and then Lola, his girlfriend, wanted to do her secondary schooling. She's a French citizen back in Paris. So they moved back to Paris, and he's been living there for about a year and a half.
Okay. Wow. That kind of rings a bell, I guess. What are your soils like out there?
Our soils here on the property are Joria Nicayas, so both volcanics. We have a range. We have so many different vineyards around the valley, though, that we really do have a nice, complex system of all different soil types.
So I always ask people this because whenever you think of what a winemaker does, I always just think the blending. But your job is year-round, clearly. What do you do all year round as the winemaker? And how does that relate to going in the vineyard? That there must be vineyard managers as well.
Yeah, we have vineyard management, and then I have Claire, my assistant winemaker. She's kind of our grower liaison, so she's my eyes in the field. We have about 30 different vineyards that we work with in addition to the estate, so it's a lot of time spent out there looking around and kind of getting a good idea of what's going on, and then relaying that to the vineyard managers or the people that own the vineyards. I spend most of my time either in the cellar doing cellar work, or I spend a lot of time typically traveling, doing a lot of around the different states and different countries. I do a little bit of everything, to tell you the truth. So I enjoy that aspect of it, that it's not really the same thing all the time. Right now we're putting up deer fencing in the vineyard because it's a little slow in the winery. So we just got a sparkling. We were just finishing up, racking off. We put our 2019 Riesling sparkling into bottle a couple of weeks ago, and then we did a sparkling dry muscat this year.
Oh, cool.
Predominantly orange muscat. It's about 80% orange muscat, 20% early muscat, and that'll be a bone dry sparkle.
And is that a pet nat or?
No, both method Champenois.
Oh, it is.
So
okay, wow.
They've been staying about 32 months in bottle, is what our first Riesling, we did a disgorgement at 18.
That sounds awesome. So what my job is impacted greatly by the coronavirus, but you guys are in the country, in the vineyard, where you're already kind of socially distant. But how has this new life that we're in the middle of, how has that affected the making the wine and your job day to day?
I mean, mostly really tasting room, and I mean, it would be probably the retail side of the industry more than anything. As kind of an agricultural business, we're just kind of going along as we have been.
But so you already, clearly the tasting room is closed, but you had a strong direct-to-consumer business already, and so the website has been in place, and that has just probably ramped up, or you had to make big changes?
Yeah. No, we had a new website that went live a couple of weeks ago that's been really great with all this, actually. It's worked out. They have a lot of features on it that are conducive to this. We've been doing, we usually do a Pizza Friday, one Friday a month, where we have about 150 pizzas that we come out in about a 3 or 4 hour period. people come out, fill the winery and everything. Well, we decided
Uh-huh.
we'd just try it doing pick your own pizza up type of thing. And we've done it now for 2 weeks, and we've been averaging over 100 pizzas. And it's like, it's still been a you just have to find new ways to do things.
Yeah. So wait, you make the pizzas and people come pick them
Yeah,
up?
we have a big wood-fired pizza oven, and Norma, our chef, she's been doing pizzas every Friday. So,
And then they grab a bottle of wine with it?
yeah, grab a bottle of wine. She's got Caesar salads. She makes fresh cookies.
That's
She went through
awesome.
like 250 cookies last week. So it's good.
Wow.
People are good on the hill about supporting, and people like coming here anyway. And since we're
Uh-huh.
not open, it's a good way for them to still engage.
That's awesome. Somebody asked, and I will go back to the 2020 vintage, but at the very beginning you talked about your background, but I think someone joined a little bit late. Can you tell us again and a little like what your background is and how you got into winemaking?
Okay, background. So I went into the service out of high school.
Oh,
I went in the Navy as a search and rescue swimmer. Um, I got out of that and just kind of drifted for a while. Didn't really have a particular direction, or no. I did a lot of warehouse work and stuff and got good on a forklift. And then I was actually worked in the restaurant industry for a little while, got out of that, and had 2 kids that I took care of full time. And happened to be selling old Italian motorcycle stuff. And Jimmy had an old Moto Guzzi and called me about it,
okay.
and just happened to fall into it, you know.
Did you know you had a good palate back then?
No, I had no idea. I didn't drink wine. I didn't know anything about wine. He invited me to come out and do a couple of special events at Willamette, and I just really enjoyed the atmosphere, the people, and then I did the harvest and the really hard, long hours, and that 2 months, and you had this satisfaction that you did all this work. And I don't know, it just stuck with me, so I
Yeah.
stayed with it and with him, and just kind of, I'm only here because of him.
Yeah. I'm just keeps looking at this background behind you. It's so beautiful, and your red hat is a good contrast with the gray and the blue sky and the green. It's a beautiful picture.
Yeah, my
Can you talk to us about the
Hawaii.
2020
I wish I was
vintage?
in Hawaii.
Oh, perfect. Even better.
So what's
Can you
that
tell
now?
us about the 2020? Can you tell us about the 2020 vintage?
The
It's
2020
early, I guess.
vintage. Yeah, it's kind of early. We just started to get bud break about a week ago.
Oh,
So,
okay.
I mean, it's,
It's just started. So, will there be a chance of frost? Do you ever get that out there? Because everybody that I've been talking to in France had a close to some frost.
yeah, yeah. We've gotten down. We haven't got that low. We were, I think, 37 the other morning. So we usually don't have that much risk at this point in the year.
Okay, that's good.
So yeah.
Before we wrap up, do other people have any questions? Janie, did we miss anything to cover? Um, I have loved your wines for a very long time, and I've enjoyed getting back in touch with Janie over this. I was talking about the hat a while back. Um, do you want to say anything to people about keeping their chin up? And I just find looking at the vineyards and seeing some blue skies, a lot of people in New York are cramped up or cooped up in their apartments. And I just thought about doing this because a friend of mine said that the vines don't stop and you have to keep getting out there and doing it and making wine so that we can drink it in the fall. And then there's a lot of like virtual chats and virtual wine tastings. And I wanted to meet some winemakers, see where you are, see the optimism of the vines, and just kind of chat about that.
Yeah, I really, it's been a hard thing. The whole entire, this episode, or this whole entire thing has been really hard, and we've had to
Mm,
all kind of adjust and find new ways. A lot of us has hit a lot harder than others. I mean, being
yeah,
out here, I don't see near as much of it or anything, but I
right.
definitely feel it and feel for all those people out there. I have a lot of good friends throughout the country, and it's,
Um,
it's,
a,
it's
a question just popped up. When do you feel uncomfortable or comfortable with using whole cluster during fermentation? What's your decision about doing that?
um, I just don't do a lot of whole cluster in general. So I usually will do one estate bin. Um, I just like it to be a really ripe time.
Uh-huh.
I've never been a huge whole cluster person. So we did a little bit more experimentation. We did a lot this year where we did the same lot in a 20, 40, 60, 80, and 100% whole cluster.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be interesting for me to look at because I've kind of been on that same mindset for years. We used to do a little bit, like I said, put a bin in every once in a while, but it was never a big part of how we made the wines.
Right.
So with this experiment, now I can finally actually look at it and make that determination based on tasting the wine rather than just kind of how I feel about the wine.
Right.
Yeah.
I was in Burgundy in February, and there's a lot more, not a lot, but there's more whole cluster happening over there. So is there a vision of what Brooks wine should taste like, or is it more about getting the best expression that year? And do you adapt to, if people started liking sweet wine again, would you make more? How do you decide what's Brooks and how to please your market?
I think for the most part, we just make the wines the way we feel they should be made and hope that that consumer base is in agreement with it.
Mm-hmm.
I would say though that, I mean, if there's a market trend where, you can't sell 1,000 cases of sweet wine and because people are finally starting to drink more dry wine, I mean, it's a good thing both ways, but you
Yeah.
have to be able to look at that and take that into account too. So
Yeah.
I'll always make one or the other. I mean, we'll always make a variety of all of it, but you still have to somewhat look and see what people are actually drinking and what people are interested in. And with the single vineyards, though, those are all that's just what we want them to be.
Yeah. Great. Well, I will wrap this up because I'm trying to keep it around a half an hour, and I don't want to take too much of your time. I'm really appreciative. This is not part of your job, and when I asked Janie if you could do this, she said you guys could make it work. So I really, really appreciate that.
Not a
And
problem.
thanks again for wearing the coordinated hat and shirt and being out there. It's really gorgeous. It has really, I'm sure, brightens people's days to see that. So thank you so much. It's great to see you again. And thanks for doing what you do.
Thank you. Everyone, take care.